Welcome to Secrets Out Idaho. Each week, we let you in on the secrets of Southern Idaho and speak to the people who make it such a unique, hidden gem. I'm your host, Connie Stouffer. On this week's episode, we'll hear the second half of Liyah Babayan's story about how she's rebuilding her life through entrepreneurship, community, and friendship in Twin Falls, Idaho. And she'll share her favorite secret spot to enjoy the beauty of Southern Idaho.
Because when I started Ooh La La, going into it, I made a commitment to myself that if I got to a point where I dreaded coming to work for over a week, and I mean really dreaded, not like when you're grieving or you had something happen, but you're just dreading. Your passion's not going to work with you. If that was happening for a week or two, which is like a regular pay cycle at any job, that is my 2-week notice. And that I wouldn't compromise and I wouldn't dishonor the business or the community that it's brought in together by just showing up but not showing up, right? That was one of the commitments. The other commitment was that my family stays first. And that's before I had children. And now my children, they veto any decision that they want. When it comes to events we go to or what I'm doing on Saturdays or if I'm working certain days. I mean, to the most part, they're in school half the day. So it gives me a little bit of freedom to make those choices that are prioritizing business first. But as a mama, and they are my board, right? They're the stakeholders of their childhood and their upbringing. So it's very important to me that stays centered as a navigating factor. So, but making sure and staying aligned to our values. Now that's different than business plan because your business plan evolves. Mine has many times as far as, well, what are we going to do now? What direction are we going to go now that social media is a thing? What direction are we going to go now that it's been 10 years, that now I have a whole new generation. The girls that were 4 years old when I opened, I'm dressing them for prom, or the ones I dressed for prom, I'm dressing for weddings. So what is this generational commitment that we have to extend now? These are things I didn't know about on a cocktail napkin on an airplane. You know, you don't think of those factors. Business is a whole other environment. Even in ecology, there's its own cycles, in business, and you have to really respect and honor that. You have to respect the seasons of not just your business, but the seasons in people's lives in relationship to your business. There was a third commitment I made, and that was no matter what I do, I thought I would be in business a couple of months when I started. 2 years was like, oh my gosh, 2 years? How did this last 2 years? You're surprised by your own outcome when you're doing business because you just don't know. Day to day, things change. The economy changes. The administration changes. Things in the world change. Trends change. And generations can outgrow you if you're not wise and are in it in the long term. But the third commitment I made to myself was no matter what was going to happen, that 10 years from starting Ooh La La, I would commit myself into another business or challenge myself to start something I knew absolutely nothing about so that I do not become comfortable because then you're on autopilot. Yeah.
So what was the new business that you started? So it would have been 2 years ago.
Yeah. 2 years ago, I officially launched Make Peace. Make Peace is a company, a bath line, organic bath line and skincare line made entirely out of potatoes.
Wow.
And so I love it. I personally love it because I'm a health nut when it comes to taking care of, my children and myself, toxin free, as much as possible. So it evolved out of that, just bathing my babies and just wondering and reading all the crazy things I couldn't even pronounce on the back of the bottles. I thought, you know what? I'd rather them go roll around in mud than put this stuff on their body. So skin is our biggest organ, and whatever we put on our skin absorbs into all of our cells, into our lymphs, into our adrenal, everything.
Yeah.
So the toxins are really rampant.
Mm-hmm.
There's just so many synthetics and petroleum product-based ingredients. And then literally there's chemicals in so much of the cleansing products. So I thought, why not develop a bath line? Because I know nothing about skincare or bath lines. So that was a great place to start. Not knowing anything for me is the best place to start, because then I know I'm going to commit to it or not, which is also a good outcome, because then you find something else. But I rather learn every part and detail of how something is and is made than to trust and outsource that decision, especially when it comes to something so crucial as skincare. I mean, people can react to it and with allergies. So I was challenged by it, and I loved it, and studied quite a bit, and kept finding information about soap from potatoes and how healthy it is, not just for skin, but for joint pain, migraines, eczema, scar tissue, just the sulfur. And there's just so much in potato. And it's an old form of soap making, before like animal fat and lye and all of that. And maybe there's a blend of those things, but for me, the potato became the obsession. And as a little girl, we had a lot of home remedies growing up. We lived very naturally. We still live very naturally in our family, very clean, the way we eat and the way we care for our bodies. And as a little girl, I remember my grandmother, if we got sick, cutting up potatoes and putting them on our forehead or on our feet to help pull the fever out. And many other things. Potatoes were used for rashes or as a form of soothing for like burns or treatment for scarring. So just many things. But then I researched how other cultures approached the potato. So then I, had this moment where I thought, you know what? I was listening to Lemonade album, just came out by Beyonce. And there's a line her grandmother there talks about. Her grandmother is, the audio of her says, when life gives you lemons, make lemons. And I thought, God, life's never given me lemons, but life did bring me to Idaho and gave me potatoes. So when life brings you to Idaho and is so spontaneous and gives you potatoes, make peace. And so that became our driving force. And I partnered up with a producer, and we've created soaps and lip balms and beard balms and lotions and clothing now, even that we're expanding the brand into clothing. But the whole point of Make Peace is very simple. The whole vision is very human. It's very cross-cultural, multicultural. And for me, that's such a fun, exciting, and fulfilling thing to be a part of. It's not, for me, a drive that has to do with profit or business, because I already have a day job. This is, for me now, so fun.
Yeah.
And it's based on the fact that human dignity, physical hygiene, physical dignity is a basic human right. And with the history I have of being displaced as a refugee child and a child of war, and then displaced and being homeless, hygiene became a luxury. And your human worth and value is attached to how clean you are. It really is. And if you have access to taking care of your body. So a bar of soap, we take it so for granted, is actually a luxury for right now 68 million people that are displaced in the world. 68 million people are displaced, half of whom are children. And so hygiene is not just a safety measure, but it's a human dignity factor. So if I could make soap and sell soap and donate soap, I was fulfilled. For me, it was so important to donate. So we made a promise, a pledge. For every product sold, I would donate a bar of soap to refugee camps throughout the world. And in our first year, we weren't very successful, and that's part of it, right? We planted some seeds, but we were able to donate approximately 400 bars of soap throughout different places, in camps, small camps and big camps. So in Lebanon and Greece, and through some missionaries and some groups, take them to Africa, to just places we knew that the soap would actually reach people. And that was very fulfilling.
Yeah, there's 400 people who now
have soap, and the soap it's easy to ship. It's 3 times as lasting as traditional soap because the way it lathers and the starch in it, but the potato starch, and it could change, just that quality of life for that person for just a little bit, or a mother bathing her baby, or herself before and after she's, taking care of a baby. But it was super crucial for us to make sure that stayed, that my story stayed, and other people's stories who are not heard when they're displaced became an integrated part of the vision of this company. So, if someone doesn't want to buy a lotion or a lip balm or a soap, but they still want to participate in the giving, in the humanitarian part of the business, they can purchase a Make-Peace necklace or a Make-Peace piece of clothing, whether it's a jacket or a shirt or a dress. And then we still fulfill our part of the commitment and donate bars of soap. So since then, we've done 2 fashion shows, and in both shows we were able to feature Make-Peace clothing, and sell out of it. We carry some at Ooh La La. They're like sisters, they support each other, the 2 companies, but they're doing completely 2 different things. And one has a local reach, home base, but Make-Peace, I feel, is something that grew out of Ooh La La to have that global reach, but still we have the local support and participation of it.
That's so amazing. So that's kind of a great segue, because I wanted to ask you about something you mentioned earlier about the community that developed as you started Ooh La La. Did that community that developed around your first business and around your new business, Make-Peace, did that help make you feel like you had a community that maybe you didn't have before? Was that starting a business kind of where maybe you felt that for the first time, as having that community that if you hadn't started it, maybe you wouldn't have had?
I never thought about that. That's a really good question. In some sense, I feel okay. So when someone asks me, "Oh, are you the owner of Ooh La La?" I respond by saying, "Yeah, I work there," because I work there. I don't feel like I am Ooh La La. It is definitely an extension of my creativity, but it's not my identity. Maybe there's some part of it, I think, that I'm so proud of what it is, but it doesn't belong to me. Ooh La La really is unique because it's not a traditional retail business where there's an owner and the owner goes to market and they purchase and then they bring and select. So they own it. I work there, and everyone else, all those women that come in and contribute, they co-own it. They have a share in it. I mean, quite honestly, every consignor that brings inventory or jewelry, or artist that makes jewelry or art, or a purse, they are the contributors. So I am part of a community, I guess, and I'm a co-creator with them, but I don't feel like Ooh La La belongs to me. And so in some sense, your question is like, is that the first time I felt a community? Yes and no, because I would not want to feel like that's it, I feel like the community part isn't so much. The community that Ooh La La's built has been outside of just the what people are able to buy there or in that space. It's outside of that space. It's outside of that building. It's a community that's built on shared values and shared goals
Mm-hmm.
and mutual respect and love
Mm-hmm.
of those things that we like to really see in one another, as far as being, kind and compassionate and contributing back to community, nurturing community, and nurturing globally,
Mm-hmm.
The global community. So I think that those values really create a community, but I don't think that the boutique itself, when
So maybe it was there all along. It's just kind of where it coalesced for you.
yeah, I like that. And
Yeah.
it was there all along. And I think people just needed a place to connect.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's what we did. I mean, there's the boutique,
Mm-hmm.
but when we lock the doors, turn off the lights, the community still exists and is lively and is dependable and is caring.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not everyone.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's people that walk into our boutique to just purchase
Mm-hmm.
something for themselves or as a gift,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't necessarily have a relationship with us past that. I'm just that sales lady, and my girls that work there were the sales people there.
Yeah.
And that's it. And that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the exchange, the capacity of that exchange.
Mm-hmm.
But what I really am inspired by is what it's built outside of the boutique, and all the connections and all of the community things that have blossomed out of the bringing together of hearts, minds, and passion. Because that's what women are. They are a community onto themselves. And so to bring that together and nurture it, I think, or become a part of it, or, help people direct it to a common good is really, I guess, what that space has done. So yeah, I'm really in love with our community. I'm in love with the women that have, and men who have built Ooh La La. And it's been very humbling to really understand what is business, because all business is community. Whether or not you choose to give back to that community or not, it is a community. And so it just has been very humbling and very inspiring, and adding to the responsibility to do it right. So every decision is not my decision. It's a collective decision of everyone that's co-produced that place. And they gear me with their values, and then I gear the business. So it's a very responsible role. When you're doing it right, or you can disregard those people and it will show.
Yeah.
If you disregard your community, if you don't align with them, they will feel it, and they might come in and shop, but it just will be a different thing. It will be very superficial. And at this point in my life, and how I choose to live my life, including how I express myself creatively through business, I don't care for superficial.
Yeah. Well, I think it goes back to what you were talking about at the beginning, like how you want to live your life, and making sure it's passionate and it's all parts of you, and not, and if you don't, then it won't be fulfilling. So yeah.
What's really fun in Twin Falls is, because of the scale of the community, because of the smallness of the community, is you can really, as a business owner, and as a consumer, you can really pulse it. You can really feel your community pulsing, and you can really have that gauge tuned right. Day to day, month to month. I mean, those things change. Those gauges change in the community. So you can really feel that relationship. So my clients, I believe they probably do feel that they are valued if they choose, this certain look, and they say, we would really like to carry more of this particular style or this particular cost for jewelry instead of this cost, because that's a little bit far expensive. But our disposable income allows this for us to consume this. As a business owner, I really need to gauge that, because that could change depending on what's going on. If there's unemployment, or if there's whatever's going on, or if the cost of housing has gone up, if we're in a housing crisis and people are having a hard time, getting into a rental. I really have to gauge all the components of their life to understand their experience in my boutique. If I want it to be a good experience for them and a good experience for the boutique too. And so when you build a community, if it's built on honesty, a business community, people feel comfortable giving you feedback. And then in a city like Twin Falls, when you're really exchanging with people on a daily basis, like I will see my client maybe at the store, and there are chances I will see them at the gas station and maybe again at Fred Meyer's and while I'm grocery shopping. And they won't hesitate. They will give me their feedback. We don't need Yelp in our community because we Yelp in our community the old-fashioned way. We tell people, and that's a good thing. That's a good sign of a community being connected. If your clients can tell you how they feel, or, they'll do it on social media, and that's great because that's feedback. You can grow from it. So what's nice about the scale of our community is that connectivity of with the public, with the consumer. I don't like that word, but with the public, with the clients. But then also that connectivity in the business community. So it is fun to be in business in Twin Falls because us business owners, we really are so supportive. We also do business. Businesses do business. So just like someone goes and shops at my store, I as a business, Ooh La La has to shop for ink for their printer, for a window washer, for mannequins, for a tax lady, for a graphic design artist, for all of these skills and trades and commodities that also are in small business spaces. So we have this I think I want to say, and it could be just the circle that I'm in, but I feel like it's a bigger circle because I feel this is the kind of sentiment I hear from other business owners too, is there is a very supportive environment because we understand, we really understand the trickle-down value of the dollar spent. That's good for other businesses, and that's what's coming back to us. So I don't function or approach business from a position of competitiveness because that's not how it works. Collaborative energy is usually what really feels like true when it comes to a community this size, is businesses collaborate. And it could just be a personality thing, or maybe it's just a choice to not be competitive, but collaborative. But it just feels that way. It's mutual. It comes back that same way. And it could, again, be because we put it out, so it comes back that way. But being a business owner is really fun in Twin Falls because it holds on to the human factor. There's still a very human factor to businesses in Twin Falls because we are at each other's sporting events. We are right there engaging in our, civic duties together. We're seeing each other at every stop sign because it's a small community. So there is an accountability and a responsibility to one another like neighbors before business owners, which in a bigger, I think, city, the human kind of becomes just another person you see and another person you do a business transaction with. But there isn't a sense of being authentic or accountable, responsible beyond that exchange because you might not ever see that person again, or they're just a salesperson, right? Or restaurant.
They're not my neighbor.
They're not my neighbor. But here, because of the proximity, the exchange is happening in a very close proximity, that it does have still a strong sense of the accountability and mutually wanting to see people do good in their business. Really supporting one another. It could be in completely different industries.
So I want to switch gears completely right now.
Let's do it.
Because there's so much interesting things to talk to you about. But you are, on top of running 2 businesses and being involved in the community, you're also an author. So I wanted to give you a chance to talk a little bit about your book as well. So can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. I would love to. It's been such a fun project to complete and at the same time to start. So it took me, my book Liminal, a refugee memoir, it is available on Amazon, and it's also in review right now for Barnes & Noble stores.
Oh, awesome.
And some curriculum, university curriculum reviews. And so we're hoping our family that it does spread and goes to where it needs to be for those conversations to take place. So for me, I don't see it as a business because this is our life journey and our life story. And so we've been just giving away books to libraries, and I had a donor purchase, a U.S. veteran who purchased out of Arizona. He purchased 100 copies.
Oh, wow.
To be donated to each state, whether it's to a school or to a library, but just to donate. So that's been something that I've been really trying to manage with their family to make sure that we're accountable to that, and that we are actually active in getting those books donated. So the book itself has been a lifelong unfolding, but I didn't really think seriously about sharing or publishing my journal writings until I would say about 15 years ago, when I felt like my English was getting better because I just didn't feel confident about my early writings. They were so elementary and wrong, and I couldn't express myself fully. So the book has been a 15-year-long project. And it published this last November, 2018. And since then, we've done really well as far as how many units have sold nationally, but internationally as well. And I hope a couple things. I hope, one, that it reaches the places it needs to, whether it's displaced people themselves who have reestablished their lives, who can understand that they're not alone in being displaced. And what that journey of fragmenting your identity back once it's been defragmented, whether it's by war or natural disaster or genocide, whatever has forced you out of your home. It could be led by many things. But also I hope that it sparks the type of conversations that could be taking place around PTSD in children of war and refugees. Unlike military personnel who are conditioned to experience war, and they also experience PTSD, but civilians are not prepared at all for war, but experience it full on the ground level. For children especially, that can be very traumatizing. So I try to bring that attention to their well-being, their mental health, their coping, and then what kind of treatments are available for non-traditional therapies that involve speaking a language. So there's rapid eye movement therapy, art therapy, laughter yoga, there's music therapy, there's sound therapy. There's so much more that could be done in the area of PTSD than just, laying on a couch and talking about it with a counselor, which you'd have to know the language to be able to do that. And children have a hard time with language as it is, but they especially have a hard time with trauma language. So raising awareness about that, raising awareness about adoptive communities like Twin Falls, traditionally and historically adoptive communities throughout the United States. What does compassionate response look like instead of just relocating and resettling people? Bringing attention to the space of integration, tools of integration, instead of expecting assimilation from people who are new in a country and have no tools or information to do that. So I'm really excited about the book. I was excited and felt like my goal was fulfilled when we printed 4 copies, 2 for my children, 2 for my brother's children, and a copy for my cousin. She just had a little one too for her son, because that is our story. That is the only story or legacy that we have in our family. We've lost everything else, except for our journey. And at least it's the one from my perspective, because maybe it was different for my brother. But from my perspective, that's the experience that I wanted to capture, is how did we end up on this continent? Our story's not going to be told in history books, and our story's not part of the Idaho narrative. And so we have to write our own story, or else our descendants and our children will have no roots.
I think that's a really beautiful gift to give to your children and to their children, to know where they came from and how you got here, and the, the struggles that provided their future for them. And I think that's a really amazing thing for them, but also for other people who are going through displacement around the world too.
Yeah, I would hope so. I would hope my children, they grow into an attitude of gratitude, of understanding and appreciation, just what it is that grandmother and grandfather and mother and mama, they don't call me mother, their mama, went through, experienced, grew from, and nurtured for them to inherit. Because for me, being in business, for me starting business, was thinking of my parents and my grandparents, taking care of my family, myself. For me, staying in business and starting other companies now is motivated by my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren. I have a responsibility to create platforms for them, to create a foundation for them. Or else how reckless and selfish would it be of me to come into this country, have a second chance at life, and leave no legacy for my children? I mean, that to me, I could stay back home and do that. I could go back to, a country or a conflict and lose everything and be at the same outcome. Right. My children would have the same outcome. I just feel that it is so unfair for them at the level we are in this country, of entry in this country, to take anything for granted. So if they appreciate it, that will be the most amazing thing to happen. Yeah. And if they don't, well, then that's their
I'm sure they will. I can't imagine
right?
that they
that's
would.
What they have to experience. I mean, we only live our lives. We can't live the lives of our own children. They're my children, but they don't belong to me. I can't force the life they're going to live, whether or not they'll even be interested in business or the book I wrote.
I'm sure they will be.
But I read or heard somewhere recently, and I really loved that. What I heard, it was that we live the struggles we experience in our lives are there so that we could leave lessons for those who live after us. Something like that. So the struggles we experience in our lives are there so that we could pass down the lessons. So I hope that my children, they will learn the lessons I've learned in my life. They definitely experience everything I'm experiencing, the rebuilding of our life in this country. My children are experiencing. They've had to be interpreters for their grandparents. They've had to, they're trilingual, so their home language is different than the school language. So they've had to learn English too, just like I went through learning English. And as far as the business, they are at work with me experiencing, the fact that mom has to be the janitor and the CEO. You cannot be a business owner. I don't care how many employees you have, but if you're not willing to be the janitor of your business and the CEO, you're not integrated. You just don't know what's happening at your business, because every detail you have to know. You're conducting, every instrument's being played. You have to know what's going on. You're conducting business. You're not just showing up and your name's on the business card and then you are the one that's on the features for your business, or you're the one paying the bills. No, you're a conductor. So I think those components have to be really appreciated and understood, or you just start off ready to fail, because you're you're dissing what you've created.
Mm-hmm.
You don't appreciate it. It's its living entity. It's its own entity.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to take one more hard right and change topics again.
Let's do it.
It's a question I ask everybody on this podcast. It's my last one for you here today. We always ask, because it's called Secrets Out Idaho, where are your favorite secret spots? So that could be something that you do with your family out to recreate, someplace you love to eat, or just someplace that you just love that if somebody's coming to Idaho for the first time, they definitely should check out.
Oh my gosh, I don't want to share it. There's so many in Idaho.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many in Idaho. You can blindfold yourself and walk any which direction, even here in the Magic Valley. I wouldn't recommend doing that, but if
you might fall in a canyon.
you could honestly drive in any direction and you will satisfy all of your senses. You really will, because that's the kind of nature we have here and the kind of hospitality that locals extend. They are so excited about their Idaho that they want to share it, the taste of it, the look of it, the smell of it, the experience of climbing it, swimming it, all of that. So I am not, disclosure number 2, disclosure number 1, I'm not a shopper. Disclosure number 2, I'm not an outdoorsy person.
Mm-hmm.
So Twin Falls, Idaho, the city that my family moved from was a mega city. Baku is a mega city of like 2 some million people just in the city.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the entire population of Idaho, or close to. So the first village I've ever, quote unquote village I've ever lived in was Twin Falls. I mean, I've seen livestock before and we would go into country homes and everything, but the first time I lived in a village was here. I mean, this is just so small scale, and there's roads that aren't paved at some places, and sometimes there's a sheep in my yard or a chicken running around loose, and then that can even happen in city limits, and I'm just like, okay, well, it's a country city.
Yeah.
So, but what I do love and what my secret indulgence is in Idaho, I won't give away all of them, but the one that I'll share is Gold Bug Mountain.
Oh,
it is just probably one of the most tranquil and spiritual places to visit. I have not taken my children there. I think we're ready for them. They're little still, but I think that I'm ready for them to be able to take on the hike to get there. It's not too bad, but for little ones, it could be.
Yeah.
But I'm a little one, so I mean, my son is my height. So if I can do it, he can do it. He might have to put me in one of those little backpack things you put babies in.
I would love that if someone would do that for me.
So yeah, you're also very petite, so we need to get into some backpacks and have someone carry us. But if my children can make the journey, and from watching them crawl around and climb trees and my roof on the house recently, I know they're ready for it. But it is just the most beautiful experience. And if anyone's not been there, they need to go there. And if they visit this area, they need to just make it a point to go there. Hike, I think about maybe it's a 2-mile or 1-mile hike. It's not too bad, not too steep. And then when you get to the mountain of multiple, I can't even count them all, but there's multiple little hot spring pools, personal and kind of bigger sized ones, and natural waterfalls, safe, where you could just stand under it and have it, hit your back and give you a back massage. And I love going out there and just escaping, rejuvenating. And for me, outer space like that, just not outer space, but that open space like that, where there's no access to technology, completely fresh air, and you feel like you're in the mountains or not in the mountains, but the mountain is near the clouds. So you could just feel you're in the sky, in the clouds. That to me is the ultimate luxury, to have that kind of a thought clarity and peace of mind, and just an intimate sharing with nature. That to me is the ultimate luxury. So Gold Bug Mountain is the secret.
The secret spot. That's
It's
a really
the
good one to
secret
share.
spot. Yeah. Yeah, I could live out there. I'm not an outdoorsy person, but I can really just see myself. I would live out there.
I'm not super outdoorsy. I like to say I'm indoorsy, but that's me too. But I do like to get out there and see some of those special spots.
Yeah. And that's as outdoorsy as it gets. I mean, there's everything you can carry, you have to take up there. You can't drive.
Mm-hmm.
And there's animals out there and they are wondering why you're there. So it's very outdoorsy. That's probably my most favorite outdoor experience ever.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I feel like I could talk to you for ages, and we've just scratched the surface about the things you're involved in the community and all the amazing things. But I just want to thank you so much for being on the show, sharing your journey, all the things you're doing in the community. And I just really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Well, thank you for this platform and for sharing all of our secrets here in Idaho. And I really enjoyed your questions, Connie. And thank you for letting me share my little bit of story.
Of course. Thank you. Thanks for listening to Secrets Out Idaho. You can follow Southern Idaho Economic Development on social media or visit southernidaho.org to learn more. Please take a moment to leave a rating and review and subscribe so you can be the first to hear more Secrets Out Idaho. Until next time.